My car got rear-ended, and the pregnant woman who hit me called her husband, who turned out to be Robert, the man I'd been married to for 10 years. He doted on the mistress, asking about her every need, completely ignoring my massive bleeding from a miscarriage. I threw the divorce papers at him and then cut off his income. Now he's begging me to get back together? Forget it! My current boyfriend picked me up in a luxury car, while he was seriously injured after the mistress stabbed him, leaving him unable to have children. When Robert showed up, fine beads of sweat glistened on his forehead, and he was slightly out of breath, showing how rushed he had been. It looked like he had hung up the phone and rushed straight out, without even changing clothes, still wearing the loungewear and slippers I had bought him. I thought Robert was there for me, but I hadn't even had time to call him. Just as I was wondering how Robert knew about my accident, I saw him, face etched with anxiety, bypass me and head straight for the pregnant female driver, not noticing me in the crowd at all. When the female driver saw Robert, she threw herself into his arms, her eyes reddened, tears welling up, looking as if she had suffered the greatest injustice in the world. "Robert! You're finally here." Her voice was soft and sweet, completely different from her previous arrogant demeanor. "Are you hurt anywhere? Is the baby okay?" Robert stared anxiously at the woman's swollen belly. My hand, clutching my phone, tightened. I watched the scene in disbelief, yet had to admit a painful truth. The husband I had always believed deeply loved me had not only cheated, but the other woman was pregnant with his child, and by the looks of it, at least 7 or 8 months along. And I had been completely oblivious the entire time. The joy I'd felt just learning I was pregnant had vanished. In this moment, it felt as though someone had poured a bucket of ice water over me, chilling me to the bone. A sharp pain pulsed in my lower abdomen. I frowned slightly and covered my belly with my hand. "Robert, my stomach hurts," the woman opposite me called out delicately. Robert's face instantly changed. He swept the woman up into his arms. "I'll take Jessica to the hospital first. David, you stay and handle the rest," he instructed the assistant who had come with him, then hurried away. From beginning to end, Robert's mind and eyes were solely on the woman named Jessica. He never once noticed that the other party involved in the accident was his wife of 10 years. After Robert left, the assistant instinctively scanned the crowd, looking for the driver of the car that had been rear-ended. The onlookers scattered, making way for me in the center. "Ms. Sarah's last name?" Seeing my pale face and the white Lincoln behind me, the assistant's eyes widened in surprise. It dawned on him that I was the one Miss Jessica had claimed was bullying her. I followed the assistant's gaze, a mocking smile playing on my lips. Robert himself had chosen this car for me, saying its performance and style were perfect for a woman. The crowd had blocked the view of the car earlier, so Robert hadn't seen it. But even if it hadn't been blocked, I doubted Robert would have noticed it was mine. At that moment, his heart and eyes were entirely focused on that young and beautiful woman. The concern in his eyes was so genuine, exactly the same as the way he looked at me whenever I was sick or upset. I had naively believed this man loved me deeply. Only today did I learn that a man's love and care could be divided into many parts simultaneously, and his deep affection might not be reserved for just one person. The assistant looked awkward, forcing a sheepish smile. Based on his reaction, he must have known about this Miss Jessica for a while. The assistant had been with Robert for quite some time, probably 5 or 6 years. He had always been very polite to me. I had a good impression of him and often asked him to look after Robert when he was away on business or at parties. I suspected that the assistant's involvement might be part of the reason Robert was able to keep this hidden from me for so long. The pain in my abdomen intensified. I could imagine how terrible my face looked right now. I thought the assistant might have mistaken my expression as being due to the shock of betrayal, his gaze filled with worry and pity. I didn't plan to explain. I managed a weak smile and said, "Could you do me a favor? Don't tell Robert yet that I was the other driver involved. Also, could you arrange for my car to be sent to the car dealership/service center?" The assistant was clearly surprised. It was understandable. Most people in this situation would probably rush over and make a huge scene. However, I remained remarkably calm, at least in the assistant's eyes. I stopped talking and just waited quietly for his answer. A flicker of struggle crossed his eyes, but after a few seconds, he finally nodded. The assistant was Robert's man, after all. Even though he agreed, who knew if he would tell Robert later? I hailed a taxi by the side of the road. Robert usually went to downtown General Hospital when he was sick, but when the driver asked where I wanted to go, I told him without hesitation, City General Hospital. At that moment, I didn't want to see Robert, not even to be in the same building. At the OB/GYN department at City General Hospital, the doctor gave me a thorough examination. Ms. Sarah's last name, due to the impact and the early stage of pregnancy, the fetus wasn't stable to begin with. You are now showing signs of a potential miscarriage and need bed rest, otherwise, there is a risk of losing the pregnancy. I gently touched my still flat abdomen. A small life was growing there, a life I had waited for 10 long years. Unfortunately, he or she had come at the wrong time. Robert and I were once a perfect couple that everyone envied. Robert was gentle and refined, and he was incredibly attentive to me. We had been together for a decade, from meeting and getting to know each other to falling in love, and we had almost never argued or even raised our voices. If there was any regret in our happy life, it was just one thing: we had been married for 10 years but had never been able to have a child of our own. We had tried so hard, but the results were always disappointing. I never expected happiness to arrive so suddenly. Recently, I had been feeling nauseous, and I thought my old gastritis was acting up, so I planned to go to the hospital for some medicine. To my surprise, it wasn't gastritis but a baby. It was laughable. Just before this, Robert had been on the phone with me. He asked where I was and said he was at home making soup for me, mentioning that I had lost a lot of weight recently and needed to be well nourished. I had even fantasized about how happy Robert would be when he found out I was pregnant. Please arrange the procedure for me. I don't plan to keep this child. The doctor didn't seem surprised by my decision. Things like this happened countless times in the hospital every day. Many people had to give up their children for various reasons. But the doctor still advised me to reconsider. My hands slowly tightened. But I knew that after today, my marriage with Robert was over. Although my heart ached with 1,000 regrets, I couldn't keep him or her. I didn't want my child to grow up in a broken home. After the procedure, I took a taxi back home. As I opened the door, I bumped into Robert, who was about to open it from the inside. I was surprised to find him home at this hour. Robert had changed clothes. In his left hand, he was pulling a suitcase, the one he used for business trips. It looked like he was leaving town. Seeing me, Robert froze for a moment, then immediately looked concerned. Why are you back so late? Didn't you say you'd be home by noon? Where's your car? Didn't you say you were driving back? Before I could answer, he continued with an apologetic look. I'm sorry, Sarah, something urgent came up at the office. I have to go away for a few days. Take good care of yourself at home. The soup I made for you is in the kitchen, remember to heat it up. I scoffed inwardly. It wasn't the office that had something urgent, I bet. I stared intently into Robert's eyes, trying to find even a hint of pretense. But there was none. I couldn't help but wonder how he could lie to me so naturally. Perhaps Robert was a born actor, his performance was too perfect. Let's get a divorce. Robert paused at my words, then, as if trying to soothe a petulant child, he ruffled my hair and said with a sigh of exasperation, Don't mess around, I'm really going to be late. Be a good girl and wait for me to come back. Saying this, just like he always did before leaving, Robert put his arm around me and leaned in to kiss my lips. I turned my head slightly, and his kiss landed on my cheek. Robert was momentarily startled, but didn't think much of it, and hurried out, pulling his luggage. Watching Robert's retreating figure, I suddenly realized that the past 10 years of my life had been a joke. Everything hadn't been without warning signs. No wonder Robert's business trips had become more frequent over the past 2 years. He must have been using them as an excuse to meet Jessica. It was laughable that I had actually believed him when he said it was because the company was expanding. My complete trust had become the very thing Robert relied on to deceive me. And Robert always acted so open about everything. He reported all his travel plans beforehand, and he always made time to call or text me every day. When he was away for a bit longer, he would even complain, "Sarah, I miss you so much, I wish I had brought you with me." Back then, I used to tease him for being so clingy, saying he wasn't afraid of his colleagues laughing at him. Now, I realize the real joke was on me. It was probably better that Robert left. I had just had a procedure and my body was weak. This gave me a few days to rest and also find a lawyer to draft the divorce papers for me. My marriage to Robert had no meaning left, divorce was inevitable. And what was rightfully mine, I was determined to fight for. Robert returned a week later. The assistant was true to his word, so during that time, Robert continued to report his schedule morning and night, just like he always did on business trips. I no longer cared. I had no intention of pretending to be a loving couple. So, I lied and said that I had a critical research project and had to work late in the laboratory. Robert knew I didn't take my phone into the laboratory. The day Robert came back, I packed all his things into several suitcases. "Honey, I'm home!" Robert shouted as he entered the door. But I didn't get up to greet him at the door like I usually did. When he saw the suitcases piled on the floor, he looked confused and asked with a smile, "What's this?" "Oh, your things. I packed them for you," I answered calmly. Robert's smile froze for a moment, but only for an instant before he resumed smiling. "What do you mean, divorce? I told you about it before you left that day. You're just throwing a childish tantrum again." Robert's tone made it sound like I was being unreasonable. "For inch, all right, I know I shouldn't leave you alone right after you got back from a business trip, but I couldn't help it, something urgent came up at the office. Here, look what I brought you. That bag you love so much." Robert held out a backpack like he was presenting a treasure, waiting for my praise. Robert stood there holding the bag. After a while, seeing that I didn't reach for it, he frowned slightly. "Take it, isn't this the one you really liked?" Seeing that bag instantly made me feel sick, like I had swallowed a fly. I used to really like this bag. I had even pestered Robert to buy it for me as a birthday gift. Obert had agreed quickly. I had been genuinely looking forward to it. But then, on the day I was rear-ended, I saw that woman carrying an identical one. Giving me the same bag as the woman he was cheating with? Robert, did he really have to be this disgusting? The atmosphere in the room grew tense. Robert finally realized that my talk of divorce wasn't just empty words or a joke. "Are you serious?" "Yes." I nodded firmly. "Why?" Robert looked at me with a puzzled expression. "Why?" Robert's question made me laugh scornfully. A cheating husband, and he asks why I want a divorce? What else would I do, keep him around for the holidays? "You tell me," I countered. "I wouldn't be asking if I knew, would I?" Robert frowned, as if I was being unreasonable. "Sarah, stop it, okay? I've been busy all week, I'm tired." Robert looked weary, leaning back on the sofa and rubbing his temples. "Are you sure you're tired from work, and not from taking care of a pregnant woman?" I said mockingly. As soon as the words left my mouth, Robert's slightly narrowed eyes snapped open, and his back, which had been relaxed against the sofa, straightened instantly. I looked at Robert with a half-smile. A hint of panic finally appeared on Robert's face. "Sarah, what are you talking about? What pregnant woman?" I scoffed. "Robert, this is pathetic, isn't it? You do it, but you won't own up to it? Remember the day you left, when I came home and you asked me about my car? What does that have to do with the car?" Robert was confused, wondering why I was suddenly bringing up the car. "It has everything to do with it. Because that day, I was rear-ended on the road by a woman driving a red Porsche with an 8-month pregnant belly." After saying this, I gave Robert a mocking side glance. Robert was visibly flustered, his face finally changing. Especially when I mentioned the red Porsche and the pregnant woman, I clearly saw his pupils contract sharply twice. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Bert suddenly stood up and knelt beside me, grabbing my hands tightly. "Sarah, listen to me. It's not what you think with that woman." Robert said the woman's name was Jessica, a new intern at the company, and they hadn't had much interaction until Robert drank heavily at a party/reception. Jessica then used the excuse of taking him home to bring Robert to her place and took advantage of the situation to seduce him. I was drunk, that's why I mistook her for you. Sarah, you know I only love you. I don't love Jessica, and I never intended to continue with her, it's just that. Robert trailed off here, glancing at me and lowering his head guiltily. Robert's words disgusted me. Only loves me? What a joke. 5 inch, it's just that she told you she was pregnant, and you had to take responsibility for her. So, you were simultaneously being my devoted husband and another woman's affectionate partner, comfortably enjoying life with 2 women. I finished Robert's unspoken sentence with a sneer. I wasn't. Robert retorted desperately. It doesn't matter whether you were or not. Sign it. I pushed the divorce papers towards Robert. I don't want a divorce. Sarah, just forgive me this one time. I swear I won't contact Jessica again. Robert refused to sign and refused to move out. He seemed to have truly cut ties with Jessica, following me around all day like a clingy puppy. He did all the housework, laundry, cooking, sweeping, washing dishes. When I went out, Robert rushed to open the door for me. When I went to the supermarket, Robert rushed to pay and carry the groceries. He even insisted on drawing a bath for me when I took a shower. However, to me, none of this meant anything. My heart felt no stir of emotion, my decision to divorce was as firm as ever. In my mind, a man's cheating is either 0 times or countless times. Even if Jessica was gone this time, there was no guarantee there wouldn't be another woman later. While Robert was dragging his feet on the divorce. Some other people couldn't sit still. First, I received a WeChat request from an unfamiliar number. It sent me a flood of suggestive pictures and chat logs. It was through these that I got to know a completely different Robert. Apparently, the gentle, refined, and elegant executive in public also had such a wild and unrestrained side. The perfect husband who had always spoken to me softly was secretly full of complaints and disdain for me. He said I was just pretty, but dull and uninteresting, and that being with me was stifling and unhappy. But he was the one who pursued me initially, the one who insisted on marrying me, and the one who promised to love me forever. Right after that, a call came in. Sarah, I can't believe how patient you are. You know Robert betrayed you, and you're still holding on to him? So, you deliberately hit my car that day. It wasn't a question, but a statement. Jessica wanted to use that method to make me discover Robert's affair and leave him voluntarily. That's right. Looks like you're not stupid after all. Jessica's tone was mocking, containing both smugness and disdain for me. If I were you, instead of wasting time on me, you'd go convince Robert to sign the divorce papers. Before Jessica could react, I hung up and blocked her number. I have a strong aversion to dirtiness. A man who has been soiled is like trash. I was more than happy for someone else to pick him up. However, I underestimated the extent of someone's shamelessness. Jessica was close to giving birth, and Robert still hadn't divorced me, so she was getting anxious. She actually showed up at my workplace and forced her way into my office, ignoring the security guard at the door. Sarah, Robert doesn't love you anymore. If I were you, I'd be smart and divorce him voluntarily. Jessica burst in, making a scene. As she spoke, she deliberately emphasized her large belly. It just so happened that I had an important cooperation project meeting that day. I was embarrassed and furious. I had always adhered to the principle of keeping work and personal life separate. I never discussed domestic issues at work. The people from the collaborating company exchanged glances. Their representative politely told me, Ms. Sarah's last name, please attend to your matters. As for the cooperation, perhaps we can discuss it another time. I knew this was just a polite excuse, a way for them to save face. This project was likely lost. 6. I didn't want to be a spectacle, nor did I want to waste words on Jessica. I suppressed my anger and asked security to escort her out. Who knew Jessica would be so arrogant, using her pregnancy as leverage? Who dares touch me? I'm pregnant. So what if you're pregnant? I slapped her across the face with a loud crack. I originally didn't want to bother with someone acting like a lunatic. After all, if a dog bites me, I'm not going to bite it back. I'd just get a mouthful of dog hair and feel disgusted. But that didn't mean I was easy to bully. Enduring silently was not in my nature. Since Jessica herself was being shameless, there was no need for me to be polite. You hit me? Jessica covered her stinging cheek, looking at me in disbelief. You knowingly became the mistress? What about it? Should the mistress who broke up a family not be hit? Or is being the mistress something to be proud of? Want me to live stream it for publicity? My colleagues who were watching also cast strange looks at Jessica, pointing and whispering about her. Jessica's face turned mottled green and red, her eyes darting around. Also, this is my workplace. You shouldn't have come here to cause a scene. This is something I cannot tolerate, and I certainly cannot forgive. I couldn't help but scoff. Did someone like Jessica actually have any shame? Finally, I'll say it again. The one who's been refusing to sign the divorce papers is Robert, not me. If you're really capable, get him to agree to the divorce quickly, otherwise your child will truly become an illegitimate child. I curved my lips slightly, my mocking gaze falling on Jessica's swollen belly. Jessica's eyes flashed with resentment and unwillingness. Suddenly, Jessica seemed to see something, and a malicious smile curved her lips. She clutched her belly and cried out dramatically, "Ah, my stomach hurts." My face changed slightly. What an old trick. But no matter how old a trick is, some people still fall for it. Sure enough, when Robert, who had rushed over after hearing the commotion, saw Jessica crying and clutching her stomach, he looked at me as if he wanted to devour me. "Sarah, I know I wronged you, but no matter how much you hate me, you can't be so malicious as to hurt an innocent child." Disappointment washed over me once again like a tidal wave. This was the man I had loved for 10 years. It turned out that in his heart, I was a vicious woman who would harm an innocent child. Robert had convicted me without even knowing the full story. Now I only regretted being so blind and foolish back then. Get out now, or you'll see a side of me that's even more vicious. I stared at Robert, saying each word slowly, my voice as cold as ice. Robert had never seen me like this before and was momentarily stunned. Seeing this, Jessica quickly pulled at Robert's clothes. "Robert, my stomach hurts so much." Hearing this, Robert snapped back to attention. "Don't be afraid. I'll take you to the hospital right now." As Robert and Jessica left, the spectacle of the arrogant mistress coming to provoke the wife finally ended. I knew that for a while, I would probably be the topic of gossip for everyone. But I didn't care. However, the divorce definitely needed to be accelerated. I had originally wanted a civilized separation, but Robert wouldn't cooperate. So, I had no choice but to resort to some special methods. I took out my phone and dialed a number. 2 days later, Robert was fired from his company. "It was you, wasn't it?" Facing R. Obert's accusation, I smiled calmly. "That's right, it was me. Yes, I did it. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Robert yelled at me furiously. 7. I raised an eyebrow and scoffed. "Of course I know. Robert, I may be foolish, but I'm not stupid. You were dragging your feet on the divorce not because you loved me so much, but because you were about to be promoted to vice president, and your boss values integrity above all else. You were afraid that your infidelity scandal would be exposed at this crucial moment and complicate things." "How did you know?" Robert's eyes widened in disbelief, looking at me. I sneered. "I forgot to tell you. Your boss is actually my former classmate from college. So, Robert, just sign the papers and stop disgusting me." Looking at the divorce papers I had thrown in front of him, Robert's face showed anger and humiliation. "Fine, I'll sign. Just don't come crying and begging me later." Robert signed his name in a fit of pique. Ha! Beg him? Robert sure had a high opinion of himself. A philandering man talking like a ladies' man. Although Robert was the one at fault, he had lived in this house, and it bothered me. So, I didn't want the house. I had him give me the cash equivalent, and I moved out. The rest of the property distribution was also reasonable. After the divorce, perhaps because I was away from the scumbag/cheater, I felt like my luck had improved. The research project I was in charge of progressed smoothly, and within 6 months, I was promoted to RD director. I heard that not long after getting the divorce certificate, Robert married Jessica. I heard Jessica gave birth to a son. I thought Robert must be happy this time, finally got what he wanted. By rights, Robert shouldn't have remembered me, his dull and uninteresting ex-wife. However, one night, Robert actually called me. Robert must have been drinking. He cried on the phone, saying, "Sarah, I was wrong. I regret it." However, before I could say anything, the phone was snatched away by the man beside me. "Sarah is too tired, she's already asleep. Now that you're divorced, I hope Mr. Robert's last name won't call her anymore." Too tired? As adults, Robert certainly understood what those words implied. Who are you? What's your relationship with her? Robert's questioning tone was like that of a husband who had discovered his wife was cheating on him. However, the response was a busy signal. I had hung up. To my surprise, when I went downstairs for work the next morning, I saw Robert downstairs. Robert must have been waiting for a long time. There was a pile of cigarette butts on the ground by his feet. Who was the man last night? Seeing me, Robert was extremely agitated. He grabbed my hand and demanded, "It's none of your business." I frowned and forcefully shook off his hand. "I know how much you loved me. I don't believe you've moved on and found another man so quickly. You must have found someone to deliberately make me angry, right?" I really didn't know where Robert got his confidence. I had to patiently remind him again, "Robert, we're divorced. You have no right to interfere in my affairs now." "What about this? Why didn't you tell me you were pregnant? No matter what, I'm the baby's father, aren't I? Were you planning to marry someone else with my child and make my child call someone else dad?" Robert pulled out a piece of paper, looking furious. It was my old medical report, which must have been left behind when I moved out. Yes, I was pregnant. Seeing Robert's surprised face, I calmly continued, "But I terminated the pregnancy." "What did you say? You terminated it? How could you make such a decision without consulting me?" The smile on Robert's face vanished instantly. "How could I? Because his father was a cheating husband." I sneered. Robert choked. "So, Robert, anyone has the right to criticize me, but you don't." I thought I had made myself perfectly clear. But to my surprise, I saw Robert downstairs again the next day. This time, he was even holding a bouquet of roses. I frowned. Why was this man like a persistent ghost? If I hadn't been sure why Robert was bothering me before, now I knew. After he left yesterday, I contacted some mutual friends. Before, everyone had intentionally avoided mentioning Robert in front of me, so I didn't know much about what was going on with him. Apparently, after Robert and Jessica got married, their life wasn't easy. Jessica gradually revealed her lazy nature, only caring about dressing up and spending money lavishly. Jessica never did housework, and the child was always left with Robert's parents. When Robert came home from work, he had to cook and clean the house. Because of his infidelity, very few companies were willing to hire Robert. He ended up taking a low-level job at a small company, doing menial tasks. As Robert's income decreased, he could no longer support Jessica's extravagant spending. Jessica's attitude towards Robert worsened, and she even showed increasing disrespect towards Robert's parents. Most outrageously, she took all of Robert's savings and used them to buy a house outright for her younger brother. This led to a huge fight between Robert and Jessica. Their lives were a constant mess. Ignoring the roses Robert offered me, this time I decided to make things even clearer. "Robert, don't think I don't know why you're coming to me now. It's just because after being with Jessica, you realize that the glamour you envisioned isn't there, and your current life isn't going well, so you've started thinking of me again. To put it simply, you're just greedy. But nobody will wait for you forever. Just leave. You look pathetic clinging on like this." Robert looked as if he had been struck. The color drained from his face, his shoulders slumped, and his whole being exuded a deep sense of dejection. Yes, Robert was such a proud man. From childhood to adulthood, everything had gone smoothly, both in his duties and his career. He had never been ridiculed or looked down upon like this. Robert left. This time, he was truly gone. I heard about Robert again a year later. Robert had an accident. He was reportedly stabbed by Jessica and almost died. He was in the emergency room for a day and a night before being pulled back from the brink of death. It turned out Jessica wasn't a quiet person at all. She would sneak off to bars to drink and party even while breastfeeding. The baby suffered alcohol poisoning from her breast milk, resulting in severe nerve damage to the brain. It was for this reason that when the child was admitted to the hospital for treatment, Robert discovered the child's blood type was wrong. He was O-type, Jessica was A-type, but their child's blood type was AB. Robert had a paternity test done and confirmed the child was not his own. He had unknowingly been raising another man's child. Robert confronted Jessica with the paternity test results. At first, Jessica adamantly denied it. It wasn't until Robert, enraged, slapped her twice that Jessica finally told the truth. Ironically, Jessica herself didn't even know who the child's biological father was. She had been seeing several men simultaneously. When she found out she was pregnant, Jessica was momentarily stunned. She didn't know which man was the father. Of the men she was seeing, she had initially pinned her hopes on a rich second-generation guy. Jessica went to his place, but she couldn't even get past his door. The rich guy told Jessica he was just playing around with her and never intended to marry her. He transferred her 2,000 yuan and told her to get an abortion herself. Jessica then settled for Robert, who was eager for a child. Indeed, when Robert heard Jessica was pregnant, he was so careful and protective of her, he almost put her on a pedestal. This was why Jessica had wishfully thought Robert would definitely marry her. However, she didn't know that Robert wanted the child, but he never intended to marry her. It wasn't that he truly loved me so much, but rather that he couldn't bear to let go of the image of the loving husband he had built over many years. Robert was the typical hypocrite. He couldn't let go of the good wife at home, nor could he resist the temptation of women outside. When Robert learned the truth, he had a fierce argument with Jessica, threw her out of the house, and declared he would no longer be responsible for the child's medical expenses. Jessica was unwilling, and she didn't have a stable income source and couldn't afford the child's high medical bills. In a fit of rage, Jessica went to Robert's house, took out a knife she had hidden in her bag beforehand, and stabbed Robert in the abdomen. After Robert was injured, Eleanor, my former mother-in-law, came to see me. She begged me to go visit Robert. According to Eleanor's description, although Robert had been saved, he seemed to have lost the will to live, looking lifeless and refusing to eat or drink. Eleanor only had Robert as her son and was terrified something serious would happen to him. So, even knowing she would face rejection from me, she came to beg without any regard for her pride. I didn't want to go. Whether Robert lived or died was none of my concern. Eleanor seemed to sense my thoughts and actually started crying and bending her knees, about to kneel and beg me. Although Eleanor had sided with Robert in the divorce, I could understand. After all, Robert was her biological son. Without him, I was just a stranger to her. I could be hard-hearted and not care about Robert's fate, but I couldn't face the desperate pleas of a grieving elderly woman. In the end, I agreed to visit Robert in the hospital when I had time. I hadn't seen him in a year, and when I first saw Robert, I almost didn't recognize him. Was this emaciated man lying in the hospital bed, looking utterly devoid of life, still the same spirited executive, Robert? The moment Robert saw me, the emptiness in his eyes flickered, replaced by disbelief, then excitement. Sarah? Before the smile on Robert's face could widen, I said calmly, "Don't misunderstand. I only came to see you because your mother came and begged me." Robert's smile froze on his face, then slowly disappeared. 0-inch Sarah, I truly regret it. Believe it or not, from beginning to end, I never thought about divorcing you. In the past few years, your position kept rising higher and higher, which put increasing psychological pressure on me. Also, we never had a child, and you know how much my parents long to see their grandchild. I didn't know who to talk to about my frustrations and helplessness. Just then, Jessica appeared. She was understanding, gentle, and always listened carefully to my troubles and comforted me, making me feel like I had found a kindred spirit. But that was all it was. I scoffed inwardly. Even now, Robert was still blaming me for his infidelity, trying to find a reasonable excuse for his disloyalty. I believed Robert never intended to divorce me, nor did he ever plan to be responsible for Jessica. Ultimately, at his core, he was selfish. Sarah, we loved each other so much once. Can we start over? We did love each other, but the love you're talking about vanished the moment I discovered your betrayal. Robert, there's cause and effect. You brought this all upon yourself. Don't push all the blame onto others. Trouble doesn't seek the faultless. If you hadn't been so arrogant and indulged in the wildflowers outside, how could you have ended up like this? The color drained completely from Robert's face, his eyes became dull and lifeless, and he kept muttering, "You're right, I brought it upon myself." Then he started laughing like a lunatic, even crying from the laughter, his appearance wild. Ha ha ha. Retribution, retribution. It was then that I learned that because of Jessica's stab, Robert had lost his ability to have children. He would never have children again. Robert's last name, family line was ended. For a proud man like Robert, this was a fatal blow. The child Jessica gave birth to wasn't Robert's, and the child I was carrying was aborted because of Jessica. So, Robert was right. This was retribution. The retribution for his marital betrayal. Robert, this is the last time I will see you. From now on, whether you live or die, or no matter who comes to beg me, I will not soften my heart and come to see you again. After saying this, I left the hospital room directly. Before I had walked far, I heard suppressed sobbing coming from the room. However, my departing footsteps did not hesitate or pause even for a moment. Once a person makes a mistake, they have to pay the price. No one is an exception. Robert's misfortune did not deserve my sympathy. On the contrary, I felt incredibly lighthearted, and even my steps became lighter. Stepping out of the hospital entrance, I immediately saw the car parked by the side of the road and the familiar figure leaning against it. A smile curved the corner of my lips unconsciously. Facing the gentle breeze and the morning sun, I walked forward with big strides.